as far as the school side. Now, I actually met you one year,
Mm-hmm.
I think 2 years ago, in the barbershop. You were making your rounds, you were in the mix in the community. And I
Mm-hmm.
like that about you. And I asked you a
Yep.
tough question and you didn't back down. And you were like, well, I'm
What you
gonna
ask?
try. Well, at the same question I ask anybody that will listen when it comes to Prince George's County public school system and
Mm-hmm.
my level of disappointment in its performance, comparatively speaking to my own personal experience, and independently of just the experience I have with my son, who is now in the 10th grade at Charles Herbert Flowers High School. And not only that, there was Kettering Middle, there was Drew Freeman Middle, there was Perrywood Elementary. I am so bothered by the lack of what seems to be systemic
Mm.
obligation and consequence for the performance of teachers and administration to operate in ways that are for the children, that are pro instruction, that are pro accountability, and communicative with families. Like, I get it. We had a pandemic. That was 2019, 2020, 21. I get it. It was tough. But the experience of parents being able to come into the school before and now, like, there's no longer an excuse. So I'm just curious, as far as, because I don't want to go and down the rabbit hole, because
Mm-hmm.
I know you're not a part of the school board.
Mm-mm.
I would like to understand, as a county council member, what level of influence do you have when it comes to PGCPS? And of course, all of our schools, we're in your district, or
You are. You named about most of the schools in my district that your son must have attended. I would just say this, it's a complicated situation. We have a $5.4 billion budget. About 60% of it
would it
goes,
be
yes, $1 billion budget. We have about 60% of that $2.8 billion goes into the school system. So it's,
2.8
yes, it
out
is.
of 50?
Yeah. So it is quite a bit. No, it's yes, I understand. It's a little. It's close to 60% when we put it together. But I would say this: the reality is that most of our money goes into the school system. There, we have the
Did you
second.
say it's close to 60%?
Yeah, it should be around 60%. So hold
You
on.
said 2 out of 50?
You said what?
You said 2
2 billion.
Yes,
out of 50?
2.8 billion.
Out of 50?
No, 5.4
Oh.
billion.
Oh. Okay.
Oh, okay, 5.4. Okay, sorry. I
But you
added
said
a
60.
zero. Okay,
Yeah,
so 2 out of
put
5.4.
a
Okay.
zero in that thing. Put a zero in
Okay,
that thing.
okay, okay.
2.8 out of 5.4.
2
Mm-hmm.
point out of 5 point. Okay, got you.
That's
Please
all 60.
continue.
Yeah.
Mhm.
56.
So when you're looking at that, we put most of our money into the school system. Because I am not on the school board, we don't control the policies within the school system. We just write the check. And to be honest, we are not in the school system. We're not educators, so we kind of trust the superintendent to kind of implement. But there have been a lot of problems. The reality is that we have the second largest school system. The first is Montgomery County, but we have way more
Oh,
need. We have way more need than Montgomery County. We have a limited budget. Montgomery County is dealing with a $7 billion budget. DC has a $20 billion budget. So they have more money to put into their school system. And I would say DC has a much smaller school system than
Mm.
we do, and they have less people. We have
can I
about a
be
million.
honest?
Mhm.
The thing is, the issues that I have personally observed, and this comes from, because I live in DC, but my son's father lives in Maryland. My
Mhm.
son goes to a Maryland school, but there was other times we lived in DC, and my son went to DC schools. He went to Tyler Elementary, which was a Spanish immersion school. He went to a DC public charter school, Shining Stars Montessori, of which I was the parent representative on the school board. I was on the DC PTA, the DC chapter of the PTA for DC. I was a room parent. I'm a field trip mom. I'm a PTA mom. I participated in all these things. And the things that I noticed and observed, they don't have anything to do with money. They have to do with teachers
right. It is
and their
money.
performance
It's money.
and the accountability.
Right.
Teachers some money.
It's still money. The reality is that
Okay.
we pay our people less than all the surrounding jurisdictions. So we have teachers that start off at the same rate as the other jurisdiction, but the rate to move up is much higher in other jurisdictions. So a lot of people who start off in Prince George's County, we're almost like a training ground. They go to DC or
Right.
other places.
Oh.
So
Is that
It's
why
like
we
the
have so
wizards.
many permanent substitute teachers
So we have a lot of substitute teachers.
that we don't hear about?
We have a lot of substitute teachers. It's hard, and we do. I would say this: we don't pay as much as other jurisdictions, so it impacts sort of what you get. And then I will be honest there, because I don't want to say our teachers are doing the best they can. We don't have enough support systems because we have less money. So the reality is that a teacher that has to teach 20-something kids, and you've got some kids there that are struggling with all these things, and we have limited counselors, things like that. One teacher to focus on all the things that they have to do, and then we don't have the support system around them to help them get this person out. I mean, in DC, we fought to have a nurse in every school. Something that you could take that IEP
That I thought was
all of those.
guaranteed as a child, but
Yeah.
now I see
We never
could
had
go.
that.
You could go just like the art class can go. I would have never thought that.
Right. And I would say this, at least in DC, when 2017, when I worked at DC Nurses Association, we had a nurse in every school. Nurses can take some of the burden that a teacher has to think, especially when it comes to mental health issues, all of those things. In Prince George's County, you don't have permanent nurses at all hours in the school system. So if something happens with a mental health, you might need a counselor, but if you got one counselor that's moving between 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 schools, then they're not available at sometimes when things happen. So a teacher still has to juggle more with less money. And so we did at one point, we had a slew of substitute teachers come in because we literally were losing people. Because after a while, folks gonna say, I don't have to deal with lack of support in Prince George's County when I can go to Montgomery County and I got less problems
get
in
all the
school system,
resources
and
that
I
I
get
need
to be paid more.
Yeah.
So
But
you
the-
don't see, and
But
even
the systemic part that I'm talking about, right? So let's say with the resources, and again, I recognize that you are not on the school board. You are not the District 6 school board member.
Right.
But I just want, I'm genuinely asking you for help, because I turn to my right and I turn to my left and there's nobody. And I know I'm not crazy. But if you're saying resources, I'm juggling, but if a teacher is supposed to, let's say, respond to an email to a parent, does that have to do with money?
Yes. If you're
overwhelmed,
overwhelmed and you have a lot that you have to handle, and you don't have the support.
But isn't that a part of your, help me understand,
if you don't have
because is that not a part of your job?
If you don't have the support things in place, then you're dealing with a lot of things all day that another teacher that has all these other people to take them off their hands can focus on. After I get out of school, after my class is over, let me respond to all these emails. If you don't have support system, it's like these are the type of things that fall through. Responding to parents, doing the things that teachers are saying, I can't do because I have a class, like we're talking about WISE, where we're looking at a class of almost 30 students.
Yeah.
If you've got to deal with 30 students and then you don't have a counselor that's permanently working with you, if you don't have a school nurse, you don't have all these things, then you're juggling.
So let me ask you this, because I'm a firm believer in
we got 5 more minutes. We got 5 more minutes. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Firm believer in PTA, which is parent, teacher, administration. Like it's right. We all wrap our arms. We connect to wrap our arms around the student.
Have those,
right? So I'm sorry.
I'm going to jump in. That's one of the biggest problems in Prince George's County. We do not have robust PTAs. Almost our PTAs are very much not really engaged in some schools. Some schools have a big one. Some schools simply do not. And the principals are having a difficult time keeping active PTAs. I would say we do have a very much of a work, and that's the difference between a Montgomery County and Prince George's. You're going to have more parents there that can say, look, I can come to the school. I can be the mom that goes on the school trip. I can be but we have a lot of busy moms that frankly don't have the time to
invest. They need somebody to organize it.
Yeah, they don't have the time. And that's
so what I'm going to take from this is that I need to step up because what I'm looking for is not there. And I think what I'm comparing it to is when my son was younger and we were in DCPS. So what I'm hearing you say is that the resources are different. Therefore, what I thought was obvious and automatic is really a money related thing. And so if I want to see significant change, I got to step up in what I can do and what I can offer.
And I would say this, that let's not assume, like there are a lot of areas that have higher wealth in my district where the parents are simply just too busy. We just have that in our community where people might say, look, I might make a lot of money, but I'm busy. And I don't have the time to spend because I got a big job and all this, and I don't have the time. Or you have people, frankly, a lot of our people that are working 2-3 jobs to make it. And they simply say, and we've heard say, I don't have time to sit there and baby, they got to figure it out because I got bills to pay and I got to work these schools. And I mean, I would say there's a difference. I will say with those areas where you have working parents that do not have time, the PTAs are simply very weak. And the people that usually handle them after a while, they're doing everything and then they get jaded and then they say, forget it. And the principal is dealing with putting out fires all day. So then they don't have time to go and cultivate. So I would say they have a community school coordinator that
okay.
And those are the ones that are supposed to help cultivate these PTAs. But frankly, we were talking to one school coordinator where they were calling people and they're more interested in the turkey giveaway than because they need food, right? Like they don't have enough food at home, things like that. So it's more complicated.
Yeah, they got looking for a food drive, and you got and your living conditions. You got roaches and mice and bats. But let's get to Bill 52.
No AC and no heat.
Right.
Let's get to Bill 52, data centers and PG. But cool.
I want to talk about that.
Did you want to touch on the 24-hour tobacco or anything else cool before we move on?
Yeah, well, it seemed like everything, the root, well, not the root of it all, but the solution to all the problems would be citizens getting more involved. Even though, and I know it, even though you're busy, we have to find some type of time for community because we miss that. And I notice there's a volunteer coach that I look around and I'm like, it's not a lot of it around. It's not a lot of it.
Remember, I said the biggest pandemic issue and now is loneliness. The reality is that people live in their silos. Even that people that have their kids, they pick up their kids, they go home. They don't engage in the community. They don't do that. So the reality is that even when they find in a public school, when they have a problem child, the problem child is very difficult to get a parent in to say the problem child is where you find this very difficult for the parents to engage. They actually say that the highest number of when you deal with these kids that are involved with crime, the correlation is truancy. They almost don't come to school.
Yes, that's true. I was a parent engagement specialist and community outreach coordinator.
I guess we could have had Kamala Harris to lock up all the women, but let's get to data center.